And we're back. Neal Isaacs, the Raleigh business broker, coming to you with more information. Small business owners, buyers, advisors, anybody in the small business world on a hot topic. Hot topic is leases. Presently, we have like 4 deals under contract. They're all held up by leases. Leases are always a problem. So let's spend some time on them. This is going to be a show me type of video because I pulled out an old lease and I highlighted some stuff, and I'll show you how I look at leases. And I'm going to give you 3 takeaways if you're looking at a lease to look for and to work with your advisors with. The advisors being if you have a commercial real estate advisor that's helping you negotiate your lease, or a business attorney. Just understand what these things mean for you. Let's get to it, shall we? I will share a screen and we will look at a real lease. And I want to be careful of how I share this because this is a real lease. So I'm intentionally not sharing this part. I want to show you that this is pretty common, that this is like 70 pages, right? This is a very long lease, 74 pages. You can see where it's been signed. I don't want to highlight any other pages because there's some client information on here. I've tried to blind it. But when I look at a lease, I open it up and I look for the table of contents. At least there's a title page. And then there's some specific things that I look for. So the first thing is, how much is the rent, right? So that's super important. This is a nice chart. You can usually kind of see this chart when you look at a lease from a broad view. It's one of the few structured parts of a lease. And it should really spell out like this is the initial term. Fixed rent is a good thing. Like, you know what your rent's going to be. That's what most business buyers, most business owners want to know. And so you look at the price per square footage and the price per year. Just know that this isn't the full rent. This is the base rent in most cases. And there will be tie cams. There'll be other things that you have to pay for. And those you have less control over, but you should have control over this. And so look for that. Specifically, look to see, and I want to go to some highlighted sections here. Look to see on the fixed rent if it is if there's any language about a percentage. You want a fixed rent in most cases, but if it's talking about a percentage rent, they're saying like how much do we, the landlord, get from the monies that you make? And if there is a point that we start to take your monies, I'm speaking on the landlord, where is that amount? It may say like everything over $1 million, we're going to wet our beak 30% of it. That's what a percentage lease looks like. But if it's a fixed rent, this one was a fixed rent, then you won't see that language. The other thing I look for is the percentage of increase. So here, 3% year over year. We see 2%, 3%. Depends what's going on. In this case, this tenant got 10 years. They knew what their lease would be, and then goes into renewals. And I want to speak to this a little bit. There's some language about how they would calculate the renewals, right? So, the renewals, they go into this thing like after we run out of this 10 years, then we'll just see what the market states. So, that can get a little bit iffy. Ideally, you would have 10, in this case, 10 years, your rent, and then an option for 5 or 10 more years, whatever, and that rate as well. There's less risk for the buyer if they know what the rate's going to be, right? Now, you could say the market's going to be worse, so maybe the rent will go down after 10 years, so I don't want that number drawn out. But in most cases, it's good to know what your rent's going to be instead of just relying on something. You definitely want an option to renew, and a lot of landlords don't like to give options anymore, but you kind of want to know what that is. So how would they calculate what the rent would be if we don't know what the rent is, if it's not spelled out in numbers like this? That's one big takeaway I wanted to share from this. Another thing to look for, and this is in the business buyer tenant's favor, is this: look in the assignment and subletting phase. You should be able to assign your lease. I'm building to something super important. I'm saving that for the third thing, but you should be able to assign, and you should look for this language about cannot be unreasonably withheld. I searched this lease this lease here, and the term cannot be unreasonably withheld was there like 6 times. But most of the time is benefiting the landlord. In this case, it benefits the tenant. What this is saying in a weird way is, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, you can assign the lease, and we, the landlord, cannot unreasonably withhold it. We can't say, we don't like them, we're not going to assign the lease. That's really bad for you. That removes your ability to get out of the lease, right? So you want to be able to assign it, and you want some language that says they can't unreasonably withhold the assignment. That's what this is. So look for this unreasonably withheld or cannot be unreasonably withheld language. That's some important language in your lease. Obviously, the landlord wants to have authority on that. They want to be able to know who's going to go into their property. But just know that they do have to give you the ability to assign it in most cases. If it says, I have seen where it says you can assign this. You specific named people are the only people who can have this lease. That doesn't give you a lot of options. That means you are kind of locked in. You cannot sell your business if your business is dependent on the space. So look for this cannot be unreasonably withheld language. And then obviously you want to look for a security deposit. And then there's the big one. And that's what this third one is, what this video is really, really about. And it is the guarantee. So lean in here with me, folks. This is where it gets interesting. This is a real guarantee. And the reason I have this up is if I scroll through this very, very long lease, which is pretty traditional, this document is, look at that, I'm still going. It is, I'm not showing you the lease because there's proprietary information on here, but it's right about here, page 67, right? It's buried at the end. You might not be paying full attention if you start on page 1 and you're reading every single page. But there's some really, really strong language in here I want to call your attention to, and I just want you to talk to your advisors about what this could mean for you. What it says is that you start your business and your business guarantees the business will pay the rent. But then there's a personal guarantee that means that if you file bankruptcy, if you close your business, that this guarantee is absolute and conditional, regardless of performance. So they don't care how your business does, right? You will perform on this lease. It's enforceable against you and any other guarantor. And this lease kind of stays with you. And this is a personal guarantee, right? So this could be with you and your spouse and your children and their children. I'm making a point here, right? But the most important thing to me is that it survives the assignment. Most of my clients are selling their business. They're assigning their lease. They're closing their corporation. And they're assuming that when they sell the business and close their corporation, that when they assign the lease, they've assigned the liability. This specifically says that it does not. And this is pretty common language. It's buried. It's not buried. It's towards the end, right? But this is the stuff that can kind of haunt people. And it's just important to know the obligations of a personal guarantee. So look for this type of language. Landlords make huge investments in their space, and they have a right to get paid. And this is a protection for the landlord. What they're basically saying is, we will give you the opportunity to put someone else in your place. But if they don't pay and we can't get them to pay, then we have the opportunity to look at you for payment. So that's what a guarantee is. And this language is pretty strong. I mean, you could go bankrupt and they could still have this paper against you. I believe, I'm going to stop the share here. I do believe that in that specific lease that I just shared, that particular tenant did not have to pay that. They assigned it, and things, they worked something out with the landlord. So even though it's written there, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it's going to be. But talk with your advisors about what this means for you. Typically, this isn't highlighted the way that I just highlighted it. It's in there. It's one of tens of thousands of words, but it's one of the more important things you want to look at. So takeaways: know what the rent is, know what the escalations are, understand the security deposit, know what the personal guarantee is, and know what your renewal options are. If you're looking at a lease, I hope that's helpful. This is the type of stuff that we look at all the time when we help owners figure out their options for exit. You just saw you could exit your business and still be tied to it. And that's an example of that. If you have questions about your business, contact me, the Raleigh Business Broker. Put your questions in the comment or direct message me if it's something confidential. Appreciate you watching. Until next time, mahalo.